Hello to everyone watching. This is Alec, also known as Edison Phone 1, and today I have a rather different video for you. This is a Champion Power Equipment 3500 watt rated 4000 peak gasoline generator. We got this thing about 3 years ago because we needed a generator. We didn't have electricity and this was available and inexpensive. We got it at Tractor Supply. The reason why I'm making this video is because this thing has surprised me over and over again in its quality and how well it runs. And I don't want to make it seem as though this video is basically like an advertisement for this generator, but I do want to make it to show those of you that are in the need of a generator and are maybe looking at this model and thinking, how can it be so cheap? Because this was $299 and that includes everything that you see. Nothing else needed to be purchased. So, I mean, it seems like how can a generator be that cheap? At least that was part of our impression, but we did do some research before we bought it and people generally liked it. So now, 3 years later, I thought I'd make a video to show how well it's still working and the features that I both like and dislike about this thing. There are a couple of things that I wish they had improved upon. But without further ado, let's get started. Let me start off by saying I'm sorry if any camera movements or focusing is bad. I'm using my DSLR, which has manual focus, and the reason I'm doing that is because my iPhone, which I sometimes use, those video files cannot be recognized by Windows Movie Maker, and I have still yet to purchase a better movie making software. So I apologize in advance. So let's start out with the control panel. You've got an ignition switch. That's pretty self-explanatory. There's two 15 amp circuit breakers, and the reason why there are two is because this generator actually has two windings in the actual generator part and not the motor. And they both produce 120 volts, so there's a circuit breaker on each winding. The reason why there's two is so that way this can operate 240 volt machinery. Now, current units have different control panels, and they are sometimes configured very differently, so this may not apply to one that you're looking at now, but this is an overview of what we have on ours. So then, in addition to the voltmeter, the circuit breakers, you have a voltmeter, and it tells you 110, 120, it kind of gives you a range, and 220, 240. So you know if the needle's within the black marks there, that you're okay. So this is the 120, 240 volt twist lock plug. We actually use this with an adapter. Then you have a switch that actually enables the outlets to start working, so that way you can have things plugged in and still start the generator and then turn the switch. But it also selects between 240 volts on the left and 120 on the right. Now on ours we have a trailer plug, which I actually might be using in the future. I have an idea of something semi-permanent to do with this generator. And then there is a regular 120 volt plug. Now this is the most disappointing feature about this generator, and that is a 20 amp plug, and 20 amps is not 3500 watts. That is, 20 amps is roughly 2400. So you cannot pull this generator's maximum capacity from that one outlet, or at least you can't do it safely. And most people don't actually have true 20 amp rated extension cords, so like I said, it's not that useful. Now, when we first bought this, we got away with running 2 refrigerators and a freezer all through that one outlet, but you really shouldn't do that. Just saying. And then down here, this is a ground. All the ground prongs on all the outlets obviously are not grounded unless you have this tied to something that is grounded. So that's a look at the front of the machine and the control panel. Now if we move beneath, this is where you would be accessing the engine to either put oil in or drain oil out. This is one of my least favorite things about the generator here, is that this is the drain bolt, and if you look right beneath it is part of the frame. So when you drain the oil, it kind of spills on that frame and it doesn't come out cleanly. As you can see, or you might be able to see, that frame rail, or whatever you want to call it, is indeed wet because we did an oil change recently. This wire here is it's for the low oil shutoff. If it does run low on oil, it will turn itself off, which is a nice feature. So I'll turn it to the side. On this side you have the fuel valve. You can close the fuel off, and they recommend that you do that if you're storing this for any period of time. I just normally keep it closed once you're using it. This is the air filter here, and then the recoil starter. That's basically it on this side. The choke is also here, and some people say you don't need to use the choke when the weather's warm, but I always use it because if you use the choke, this thing starts incredibly easily. One thing I forgot to mention when we were on this side of the generator is that the recoil start is in kind of an odd spot. You can't pull it straight to the right because you'll hit this frame. It kind of just sits right in here behind the edge of the control panel. So in general, I will pull it out sideways like this. And it doesn't seem to affect starting or anything. It's just it seems kind of awkward, but don't let this worry you, because again, you just pull out sideways. But it is weird because it sometimes is like, where's the starter? It's not where you would expect it, but certainly doesn't affect operational performance. Then we move to the back, and we have the valve cover right here. It says CPE on it. Carburetor's to its right, and the air filter is to the right of that. Now this here is just kind of like a heat shield for the muffler, so that way you don't burn yourself on it, which is always a good idea. And in fact, it has a nice warning sticker telling you, don't touch this. I love those kind of warnings. And then on the other side, we have the actual generator part. You can see the back of it. It's got a nice beefy cable going into the control panel and the muffler itself. Now, after 3 years, the muffler has started rusting a little bit, which I think is probably pretty normal because we had this thing out in the rain, and rust happens when you get things wet. The muffler does come with a spark arrestor. We don't have it in currently because we don't need it, but if you plan on using the generator in something like a national park, you will probably need to have that spark arrestor. Okay, so that's it for the size of the features. Let's move to the top. So I have you back on the tripod so I can point to things a little more easily, and in case you can read this through the video, that way it's not shaky. So first of all, you've got the sticker from Champion right here, and this says model number 46514. So this is the actual model of the generator that we have. It's a 60 Hertz single phase generator, power factor of 1.0. I would imagine most generators are. And it's both 120 and 240 volts, rated at 29.2 or 14.6 amps, which is 3,500 watts. Now, it's got some nice big warning stickers on you. Danger, using a generator indoors can kill you in minutes. Generator exhaust contains carbon monoxide. Of course, you don't want to run this in your house. It would be smelly and loud and also deadly. And again, in Spanish, it's got some helpful numbers to call if you're having problems with the generator. And I can't say if their customer service is good or not because I've never had to use it, which is a good thing. There's also a sticker that says, change oil at least every 100 hours. We've been kind of extending that because we decided to use synthetic oil in this thing. Why use synthetic? Well, when you have something that you need to use in an emergency situation, you want to make sure you're not making it overdue for an oil change. And also, when something uses 0.6 of a quart, the high price of synthetic really doesn't matter that much. So we've been running Mobil 1, and we probably change the oil every 150 or 200 hours. As far as how long we've had this generator running, my guess is it's 250 to 300 hours with a load. And if you want to equate that to highway driving miles in a car, that's about 15 to 20,000 miles. So we certainly have not used this thing very heavily, but that's because this is only from when we don't have power and we need to keep the generator, or we need to keep our refrigerators and sump pump working. Now, the fuel tank on the top, I believe it's rated 4 gallons. This cap is actually very nice. It feels very solid, and there's a little pre-filter on the inside to get any gunk out. that may get in there when you fill it up. And I believe this is rated to run 12 hours on the 4 gallons at 50% load, which is actually quite good if you were to ask me. And indeed, we see that sort of performance from it. We rarely have to fill it up when we are using it. Also on the front, you've got a gas gauge. It's just a real simple float type thing, but it works. There's just some other warning stickers for you to deal with. Now, this tubular frame construction is very nice. You can lift this thing from it at any point, and it is powder coated, which is very nice. And also, one thing that my friends had pointed out to me, with this tubular frame, you can lock this to something. So if you want to leave the generator running unattended, you could lock this to a fence or something and just make sure that it's in a safe area. And then no one can steal it from you, because trust me, when there's a widespread power outage, people want these things. That's why we have one. So that's it for the general overview. Now I will actually run it, and I'm going to use a Kilowatt EZ to show you the power that comes out of it. And I'll also put a 1500 watt load on it from a space heater, so you can see about how loud it is with a load. And I'll also see if that changes the speed of the electricity, as in the electricity is supposed to be 60 hertz, so we'll see if that changes the speed of the generator, which would then change the frequency of the signal, or not signal, but the frequency of the sine wave that is the electricity. So I'm going to open up the garage door, and I am going to run this sort of in the garage, which the label tells you not to do that. However, I'm going to be running a fan on it to keep fresh air moving in here, and also the exhaust will be pointed outside. So yes, this is not exactly an ideal situation, however I am making good on that by at least providing some adequate ventilation, and it will not be run for more than a few minutes. Anyway, let's get to that. Okay, so now the very first thing that I'll do is I'll show you how easy it is to start. In the summer, this thing is very, very easy to start. I think pretty much anyone could do it. In the winter, it gets kind of difficult. However, we don't really ever have a need to use this in the winter. So, in a moment, I'll start it up. Now, one thing that I cannot recommend highly enough when using this generator or any other small engine powered equipment: stabilize your gasoline. It is the most important thing you can do. It takes hardly any stabilizer to get your gas good for a year. According to the bottle, 1 ounce is good for 2.5 gallons. So this 5-gallon bottle only needs 2 ounces of this stuff to keep it ready for a full year. And this way it's less wasteful. You don't have to burn off all the old gas before or when you store this thing. But also, you know, if you burn off the old gas, there's still going to be some gas in the lines that will possibly gum up and make starting the next time you need it horribly horrific. Yes, that doesn't quite make sense. Horribly horrific. They have the same root in there, but anyway. Stabilize your gasoline. That is something you need to do. And honestly, if you overstabilize it, I think you actually are better, because the stabilizer itself is flammable, so I often will do double what you need. And if I've done that, like in our snowblower, or snow thrower if you want to be more correct in the term there, when we put it in there, you know, it can sit 6 months and then starts right up the first time we need it in the beginning of winter. So that is something you definitely should do for this generator, and really for anything that you have that uses a small engine. Okay, so the way you start this thing, according to the manual, make sure the power switch is to off. You don't want any load on it when you start it. So turn on the ignition, turn on the fuel, and then turn on the choke. Now, like I said, this thing is really easy to start. I can practically walk back with this thing in my hand and it'll start. So let's see. Okay, so I'm kind of yelling into the camera camera because I don't know if you'll be able to hear me. The sound is reflecting well off of the sides within the garage. Now, you ideally want to let the generator even out in speed before you put a load on it. Since it's so warm out, it's already evened out. So I'm going to switch the power on, and that will turn on the kilowatt, and we can take a look at the statistics that we get from the actual electricity the generator is producing. Now when I turn on the power, you may hear the fan that I have hooked up running, so then we'll know for sure. And you should also hear the generator surge a little bit with the load from the fan. Okay, I can't tell if you can see the reading from the kilowatt, but it's producing 123.4 volts. It's going between 0.4 and 0.6. So the voltage from this thing is a little bit higher than what you would expect from what comes out of the outlets in your home, which is usually around 117. However, it's certainly well within the parameters that your appliances at home require. So in addition to the voltage, I'm going to check the speed, as I said, the actual frequency of the electricity to see how close it is to 60. I already know this generator does not produce exactly 60 hertz because if you have a clock radio plugged into it, the clock keeps inaccurate time. So let's see what speed we have. Okay, so we're seeing 62 hertz roughly, so it's a little fast, but once again, definitely not anything to be concerned about. Now I'm going to shut down the generator and get my adapter cable and show you how we use that. I will also get a space heater to plug in, and that will be roughly half load. Okay, I just brought the space heater in. Now this is what we've been doing to safely pull the full 3,000 or so amps so you can get out of here. They make these adapters, you can get these at Menards. Basically they go into the 240 twist lock outlet, and then they take the two sides of the 240 volt power and give you an outlet on each end. They're also lighted, which is handy. Now, one reason I don't like using this adapter, well, first of all, it's kind of annoying plugging in because you never know which way is the right one. But if you have something with a large kickstart demand, like say a large air conditioner, if you were using one, which we don't, but if you had something like a 1500 watt air conditioner that has quite the power surge when it comes on, you're going to overload the one half of the generator that it's taking from. Because remember, there's two windings in the generator itself, and each one goes to one of these plugs. So each winding only produces 15 amps. So you may overload that and pop the circuit. Whereas if you were using the trailer plug, which is connected to both of them in parallel, then you wouldn't have that issue. But I'm going to plug our kilowatt into this as well, so we can take a look at our power when we turn on the heater. Remember, we have 123 volts and 62 hertz, so we'll see if it's any different with the load like this heater on. Now, the other thing that's kind of odd about this adapter is it requires you to use 240 volts. So the voltmeter will show 240, but what you're getting out of each outlet is 120. So that's kind of odd, and I don't really like it, but maybe you do. So we'll start it back up. We may not need the choke, but I only had it running for a little bit. We'll see. Yeah, I better use the choke. So I'm going to turn on the circuit and the generator should change its sound significantly. So this will give you an idea of how much louder it is with the load, and also how much it vibrates, because it does vibrate some more. So let's turn it on. So strangely enough, our voltage has increased. And at this load, we're actually at exactly 60 hertz. So when this generator is at half load, it is exactly 60 hertz. It's kind of funny. So I'll take the load off of it, and then we'll turn it off. So that is the Champion Power Equipment 4,000 watt peak 3500 rated generator. You can still get these at Tractor Supply, I believe. There's plenty of places you can buy these, and I can say that I can highly recommend them. As you heard, they're not so quiet. They're not like a Honda in how quiet they are, but they certainly are reliable, easy to start, and they do their job. Now, in terms of loudness, it probably seems louder in the video because of the fact that this is still in my garage. Again, don't do this if you're running this long term, and definitely don't do it if you have the garage door closed. But the sound's reflecting off the walls, so it does seem louder in here than it does outside. Now, I believe it was rated for 68 decibels, and I don't remember at what distance that is. But don't go thinking 68, oh, that's not that loud. It is somewhat loud. Not as loud as that, but it is somewhat loud, and that may or may not be an issue to you. To us, we don't really care because we've got neighbors that have even louder generators. I would say in terms of loudness, this one's probably pretty middle of the road. There are certainly louder generators, especially if you have a two-stroke generator. Those are very loud. But this one is fairly quiet, not as quiet as a Honda, but still fairly quiet. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it was helpful to you if you are on the fence about buying one of these. I would say go for it. And the way I thought of it is, you know, if it fails early, well, it was only 300 bucks. And as far as our experience, it has definitely not failed early. It's still working just like the day we got it. So, again, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video.